All right, today was a big day, supposedly a big day. I don't know. Julie Kelly was there for the whole classified documents thing for Trump. Thankful we have Bill Jacobson in here, which I'll call in a moment to explain all this to us. But Julie Kelly was actually in the courtroom, and she gave us this little audio bit letting us know what she heard today.
There were a lot of people in the courthouse today, Jesse, including special counsel Jack Smith and former President Donald Trump, sitting in the same courtroom again for the second time in 2 weeks. But one individual who was not there nonetheless had a major presence, and that is former special counsel Robert Hur, who testified earlier this week about his findings related to the willful retention, Joe Biden's willful retention of national defense information, high-level classified documents, but nonetheless, unlike Donald Trump, will face no criminal charges. Both the defense and Judge Cannon repeatedly brought up this phrase, arbitrary enforcement. It is very clear that Judge Cannon is aware of the double standard, not just with Joe Biden, but former presidents Bill Clinton and Ronald Reagan, and more importantly, former vice presidents Hillary Clinton, Mike Pence, and of course, Joe Biden. My prediction, Jesse, and I make a lot of predictions on your show, she will not dismiss the two motions before her today, but she will, I believe it's very likely, the Judge Cannon will dismiss this case based on a pending motion for selective prosecution. It's very clear she is aware of it. She's very upset about it, as you could tell from her comments and conduct today. So that motion is pending on the docket. A hearing has not yet been scheduled, but I would not be surprised if she dismisses this entire case based on selective and biased political prosecution against one man, Donald Trump.
What's that mean? I don't know. We better bring in somebody who does know. Maybe he agrees, maybe he disagrees, but I know he'll be more correct than me. Bill Jacobson, founder of Legal Insurrection. He also is a law professor at a little place called Cornell. Okay, professor, what does any of that mean? Is that accurate? Is Trump going to be out of the woods? I know we thought he was in trouble here. What's going on?
Yeah, obviously I wasn't in court, but it seems very unlikely to me that she would dismiss the case based on selective prosecution. It is a pretty high standard to meet. The prosecution could claim there are different reasons why Joe Biden is not prosecuted. And there are elements of the Florida case against Trump that also include obstruction of justice. So even if he shouldn't have been prosecuted, they're alleging that he tried to hide documents, things like that. So I don't see the case going away, but I wasn't there. I couldn't get a feel for it. And I think oftentimes being in the room when people are saying things, it gives you a better feel for that. I would not be surprised if the judge is upset about it, but I'd be surprised that if she took the step of actually throwing out the case.
Bill, can you explain to people who are confused, and there are many of us who are confused, why isn't it just tossed out? Because to the layperson, it looks so cut and dry. Okay, Obama had these documents. I'm sure Bush had the documents. We know Biden had them. You can go Google image search it. They're sitting in boxes in his garage. So to the normal person, especially the hardcore Trump fan, they look and they say, okay, he had them. Everyone has them. What's he the other one prosecuted? It seems very simple.
Yeah, except that is what goes on every day in this country, that some people get prosecuted, some don't. If that were the standard, if that alone were the standard, then nobody would be prosecutors. Prosecutors have more cases they could prosecute than they deal with. So it's not just that one person got prosecuted and the other didn't. Were they essentially identical cases, and was one prosecuted for some nefarious reason like political targeting? And we may all know that's why Donald Trump was targeted, and there's no question about that. But I'm not sure that meets the legal standard. That's why I'm skeptical. Should it be tossed for that reason because other past presidents are treated differently? Yeah, I think it should at a personal level. At a political level, it should. I'm just not sure it's going to meet the legal standard that would hold up on appeal.
Okay, let's shift gears here to New York. In about 10 days, Donald Trump's Alvin Bragg New York trial is supposed to begin. Is it going to begin? Is he in trouble here? What is all this?
It's supposed to begin. He's got a motion pending. I don't think it's been ruled on that the court should wait till the Supreme Court rules on whether there is presidential immunity. Although in the New York case, it's hard to see how there would be presidential immunity for things that his business did in allegedly covering up payments to Stormy Daniels. So I'm not really sure how a presidential immunity claim would play out in the New York case, but that's what's happening. I would expect it to go forward. I don't think that a judge in New York State is going to grant that. That case is a whole travesty, by the way. That case should never be going to trial. That case is essentially the prosecution advancing a novel legal theory to turn an old misdemeanor books and records violation into a felony so they could extend the statute of limitations. And that case should not have been brought, but it has been brought. And it's New York State courts, and it looks like it's going to go to trial.
Is he, honestly, it's probably a question I don't even have to ask. Is he going to be convicted? And if he is he going to prison in New York? I would assume the jury pool in Manhattan is not exactly going to be pro-Trump.
I think if he is put on trial in New York City, if he's put on trial in District of Columbia, maybe even if he's put on trial in Atlanta, it's going to be a very hard time for him to get a truly unbiased, neutral jury pool. I think it would be difficult anywhere, but particularly in those heavily politicized, heavily Democrat cities. It's tough, and that's one of the things we need to face as a nation. It faces whether you describe yourself as Republican, conservative, however you describe yourself, you're not liberal and you're not a Democrat. And that means the court systems in a lot of these cities and the prosecutors' offices in a lot of these cities are lined up against you. And that's the reality. So I can't rule out Trump being found not guilty, but I would think he'd be found guilty just because of where he is and who he is.
Yeah, okay. But what about the immunity thing? Isn't the Supreme Court going to rule on that in April or something? Isn't he going to get immunity for all this stuff?
Well, if they rule on it, it clearly would affect the DC case. And so you got to remember, they've got four shots at Donald Trump right now. They've got Georgia and DC. If the Supreme Court rules on immunity, that would get rid of the DC case. It probably would get rid of much of the Georgia case, but it probably isn't going to touch New York City case, and it may touch parts of the Florida case, but not all of it. So certainly if the Supreme Court rules in his favor, that's a big win for him. And I don't want to say it's not a win, but it doesn't relieve him of all the problems that he's got.
Professor, thank you so much. Appreciate it once again.